Welcome to Beyond Birth Trauma, From Burden to Brilliance, where we uncover the powerful truth about your beginnings and how they've shaped your entire life. I'm Shannon O'Flaherty, and in this show, we are not just exploring your birth, we are dismantling the chains of generational trauma. We're diving into the core of who you are, peeling back layers of inherited beliefs and behaviors that have held you back for far too long. This isn't just about understanding your past. It is about reclaiming your future. Get ready to break free. This is Beyond Birth Trauma, From Burden to Brilliance, and your transformation starts now. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Beyond Birth Trauma, From Burden to Brilliance. And in this episode of this show, we're sitting down with Devora Segall, a mother of 10, a therapist, an author, and she's going to explore the invisible threads that connect our own birth stories to the ways that we parent today. She shares the touching history of her own mother's isolated and traumatic hospital birth, an experience that sparked a generational mission to find deeper, more biological connections through nursing and attachment. And we discuss how these birth imprints and the struggles of our mothers and grandmothers shape our own nervous systems before we even hold our first child. If you've ever felt trapped in the yelling guilt cycle, Devora offers a lifeline. She introduces us to DBT, Dialectical Behavioural Therapy, a powerful toolkit for moving out of emotion mind and into wise mind. Through her personal stories, from the stress of getting a stubborn 4-year-old dressed for school to managing the dynamics of a large family, she teaches us that we don't need to be perfect, we just need to be aware. So this is a heart-centered guide for any mother who wants to stop reacting from a place of past pain and start leading her family with calm, grounded confidence. And Devora, I'm not seeing your bio here. Devora has 2 books. One is called Sensitive Hearts, Strong Minds, using DBT skills to break the cycle of trauma and raise emotionally healthy children. And her other book is called The Peaceful Parenting Solution, your step-by-step guide to becoming a better mom. And we'll talk about those more. She's also a therapist and absolutely an amazing woman. So we will dive into Devora, all things Devora now. So welcome so much, Devora, to my show.
Thanks so much for having me.
So why don't you start at the beginning? Tell us about your birth and how you came into the world and how all of that started.
So my mother was 19 when she had me. She was all alone in a foreign country. And I mean, she was alone with her husband, but she was put in a ward with a bunch of other women. And my father couldn't come into the room. And she just basically had me. She was all alone with that first baby. And this was a story that I grew up with. And understanding my mother's journey, eventually she had the rest. After with her fourth, she tried to have a home birth, and all the rest of us were born at home. She also became a doula. This way, she was able to be there with women. They didn't have to be alone anymore. So really started my mother on this journey, and it was something that I grew up with.
So she had a lot of children also. Yeah. So you have 8 siblings, is that right?
Right.
Yeah. Wow, big families. So this feeds beautifully into the work that you do, because obviously in my work, everything that comes back to our birth imprint and how that impacts us and how we're going to move forward. I didn't know the part about being in a foreign country. Why were they in a foreign country? Just traveling?
They decided to live there. No, they were planning on living there. They actually left when I was 7 weeks old, but they were planning on settling there.
Wow. Um, so what did your mother do? So you said she became a doula.
Mhm.
Um, and so tell us more about your mother and how all of that unfolded, because I think that impacts very much your
I,
story.
I think it started with the nursing.
Mm-hmm.
She said somebody, even before she had me, somebody had passed around a copy of The Womanly Art of Breastfeeding. This was I was born in 1970. So this was before it became such a thing to be into nursing. But
Right.
she was introduced to that by a mother of one of her friends. And
Mm-hmm.
because of that, she got into the nursing and the attachment and you know, that's really where it started. And then she got to know other people that had had babies at home and other people advocating for home birth, and also the idea of keeping your kids close to you. It helped enhance the nursing, and also it just enhanced the attachment.
Yeah.
These were all things that very much spoke to my mother, especially
Mhm.
after she had had that you know, really difficult experience. Even her own mother had been given really bad information. Her own mother had really, really wanted to nurse her babies, but in those days, if you had any kind of issue, any kind of infection, the child is crying a lot, they would automatically tell you, oh, stop the nursing. So
Wow.
she had so much wanted a nurse, and my mother was actually able to do that. Kind of went through the generations.
That's really interesting because I had digestive issues as a newborn baby, and I don't know why my mother didn't breastfeed me. It seems like the most obvious solution, and they were searching and searching for what kind of milk could I digest, and finally they found goat's milk. But don't you think I would have been able to digest mother's milk like the most easily?
Well, they say goat's milk is the closest to human milk, so yeah.
Oh, right. Is that right? Okay. So, well, there you go. Wow. And so, you mentioned to me when we were speaking about La Leche League, because
Mhm,
that's
mhm.
still a big active organization now. Is that right?
I believe it exists. It was
Right.
started by a group of women in Chicago,
Oh,
actually,
okay.
as far as I know. And it spread all over the country, maybe perhaps all over the world. I mean, I remember
Mhm.
growing up. I told you about my current events project. My teacher in sixth grade told us we had to bring in a current event. At that time, my mother was very into the La Leche organization, and she gave me these little newsletters that spoke about how breastfeeding had saved a child's life. That was
Wow.
the news that I brought in. Again, this was very much a part of my childhood.
Wow. So you're bringing that into a sixth grade class. I mean, we're talking about 11-year-olds.
Boy, did I get flack for it,
I
but
was
okay.
gonna say, how was that received? Like, what are you talking about? You're talking about
I don't
breasts in the
know. I
classroom?
don't know. Exactly. I use the word nursing. It's a little more. But oh boy, did I get flack. My teacher
Wow.
came over to me. She said, "Wow, you were brave." I just still remember that experience. Yeah.
Wow. Well, you are brave. Yeah. Wow. So you were a real catalyst for your mother on her journey. And
Hmm.
so do you think that you felt any of that early trauma of your mother before she started on her journey?
I imagine I did. It took a while till my mother was able to have that ideal birth. My next sibling. Also, she ended up in a hospital. She had some complications. She ended up with an epidural. Wasn't what she wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, also a doctor that was very not, didn't have a good bedside manner. And these are all stories that I heard growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next one, I don't know what happened with the next one. I didn't hear any story. I guess that one went more easily. But then the number four, they found a doctor. This was in Canada. They found a doctor who would do home births. He was going to come. Then he went on vacation. She ended up with the same doctor. She was really disappointed, but she did end up going to the hospital. Finally, her fifth, she was able to have that home birth. And I remember it was such a major deal. It was such a powerfully positive experience for me looking on, not knowing anything about birth, not even being in the room, but like just my mother's joy at having that experience, not having to go anywhere, having those people, who were just there for her. She went on to have babies with midwives, but the first was with a doctor, like an old school GP, who's
Yeah.
like kind of a friend of the family. It was
Different
really, it was,
experience. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So it's really interesting. I mean, do you think she just kept having babies until she was going to get it right? Just going to keep having these babies. One of these births is going to be great. So how did this land with you as a kid, knowing that this was part of your story? Were you proud of it? Did you feel like, oh, it's all because of me, or did you feel left out, or how did you feel?
Um, It's funny. I told you the story of seeing some bottles in the cabinet and teasing my mother that, oh, you bottle fed me. So it was almost like, in our family, we only breastfeed. In our family, we're into keeping our kids near us. So yeah, I
Hmm.
guess you could say I was proud of it, you know.
Hmm. That's good. That's really good. It's funny that you're teasing your mother for bottle feeding your kid. I mean, it's just
And now come to my house, you'll see how many bottles I have flying around because my grandchildren, plenty of them have bottles. But with my family, they're completely breastfed. I almost didn't have a bottle in the house.
well, my daughter-in-law breastfeeds, but she also pumps and takes her breast milk and puts it in a bottle, because we
Yeah,
have
it's the
different
lifestyle.
lives than we did back then. So,
Yeah.
so following on from that, Devora, when did you become a mother?
I became a mother also pretty young. I think I was like 21.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that is early.
92. 92, I became a mother. So you do the math.
Wow. I find that often we're in a parallel relationship with our own mothers. I certainly was. I think I was the same age that my mother was when she had me, and
Yeah,
I think
so
that's really
common.
interesting. And so, is that when you started to get into doing what you're doing now with mothers? When you became a mother?
Well, at the beginning, I felt like I had a really good model. And also, I felt like I could really get good advice from my mother. It just, when we hit that stage where, my child started to have a mind of his own, that's where I started to struggle. That's where had to start on my own journey. It's kind of, I had to take over where my mother left off.
Right. And so, what were you doing when you first had what were you doing in your life when you first had
I was,
babies?
so I was a teacher.
Hmm.
And then I started a home business because I wanted to be home with my child.
Yeah, that's
Sold
what I
maternity
did.
clothing. Random.
Yeah.
I've always been very creative. I've always been wanting to like make money from my writing, from my creativity, but I just didn't see a way to do that. I mean,
Hmm.
teaching was like that,
Hmm.
and now I do therapy, now I'm doing parent coaching. That all is very creative, but I didn't find running a maternity store to be a very creative
Hmm.
outlet.
But the beauty of these things, especially when we're young, and showing how brave you were from the beginning, is to just to step out and try it out anyway. Because how are you going to know? So many people don't ever try the unknown for a multitude of reasons, right? So that's the belief work that I do to help people figure out what's keeping them from trying, because the worst thing that can happen is it's not going to work out, or it doesn't feed you joy, or whatever.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Um, and so um, you said that there were some very powerful and impacting books that really um, kind of spoke to you. Do you remember what they were? I love references from books.
Right. So there was one book that really had an impact on me. It was kind of a diary where a mother was writing about how she was trying to improve herself as a mother. It was called Growing Up My Children. It was written by Sarah Shapiro. Um, I just found it very powerful, just the honesty, the realism, and also the ideas of, like how I can be a better mother. I read it when my child was still very young. It really wasn't that relevant yet, but
Mm-hmm.
really it was something that stuck in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
There's a course that I took at one point called How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk.
Mm-hmm.
That also was, but that was later on in my journey. That was where I was, I was really dealing with with these things, and that was very powerful. And
So,
yeah,
yeah, go on, go on.
the most recent book that I found, that I read at the beginning of my journey as a therapist, was by Dan Siegel, The Whole Brain Child. It was also very good. I know there's those three books sort of like, so kind of like almost a circle of, you know, things that sort of underpin what I'm doing as a parenting coach and
Yeah,
how I deal with my own children.
I really get that because I think books can be very impactful. They can take you to other worlds. They can give you ideas and confirmation. I know I think I was already pregnant with my first. I read the Continuum Concept by Jean Liedloff. And she had gone, she was a journalist, actually. I think I told you she was an anthropologist. I lied. And she went to the Amazon jungle many, many times. And she couldn't believe the social harmony and happiness that she witnessed with this Yakwana tribe. And it really became foundational text for attachment parenting, close
Mhm.
physical contact, co-sleeping, immediate response, the elderly community involvement. And it was because of that book, because I'd never even heard of it before, I wanted to sleep with my baby. And I was like, well, this just makes the most, like, just so fundamentally spoke to me. So that we slept with both of our kids and got more sleep than most new parents do because of that, I think. Yeah.
Right. Right, right. You see, as much as it worked for me, I always hesitate to recommend it because sometimes mothers could be on medication. We have to have some awareness of, where the baby's going to be relative to the mother before we do this co-sleeping thing. Now they have these co-sleepers. You could kind of roll the baby into it.
Mhm.
There's different options. But yeah, especially at the beginning, you could be on, Tylenol with codeine, and if you're a really, really deep sleep, it could be dangerous. So
Yeah,
you
you
want
don't
to
want
you want
to.
to know what you're doing.
Yes, I read about that. Like if either one of you is excessively obese or if you're an alcoholic or blah, 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 like don't. And I just remember always, and Bobby Baby, my husband at the time, he's just a super fit athlete, right? And but if the baby was there, I'd just be like, the baby is just, the baby's right there. Just by the way, wake
Yeah,
up just so that you can go back to sleep to know that the baby's there.
yeah, yeah.
So you had 10 kids. So by the time your first baby was starting to develop his or her own mind, you must have already had another baby or two, right?
One. My
One.
kids are quite spread apart,
They're great.
relatively speaking. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So by the time baby number one was starting to be in the no, mommy, no, mommy, what's this mean, mommy phase? What did you start to experience that made you think, okay, hold on a minute, got to do something different?
So I kind of remember when he was two, it was more, I was able to distract. I was able to redirect. Once he hit four, there would be times when there would just be nobody to talk to. You would think it would be harder at two and easier at four, but for me, that wasn't the case. For me, it
Mm,
was, I wanted to have a relationship with this child, and I generally did, but there were times when he would go into this mode where I didn't know how to get him to do what he needed to do. Like,
mhm,
the story that I write about in my book is, I'm dealing with this 4-year-old. I'm rushing to go to school, and I have another baby under him. Maybe I was pregnant with my third, and he's just refusing to cooperate. I actually was his teacher that year. Um, but I had other people under me. So if I needed him to do something, I could get the other teacher to get him to do it. But at home, it was just me and him and the baby. So I just remember just being stuck. My teacher, I had this co-teacher, she was going to give me this look, if I'm late. So I was like a little scared of that inside. And meanwhile, my kid was just not cooperating. Like, what should I do? Like, I felt like hitting him. I felt like just picking him up and, whatever, picking him up and taking him to school in his pajamas. But I knew that that wasn't really what I wanted to be doing. Um, so I just cried. Eventually you got dressed. But after that, I just realized, I cried all the way to school. My co-teacher gave me a hug. She said, it's okay. I understand. She was very sweet. But after that, I realized I need some more tools. I need some more. I don't yet have the skills to deal with a 4-year-old, never mind a 14-year-old. So that's where I started on this journey to just read everything and learn and then eventually I went back to school to become a therapist. And that's when I discovered what I teach now, which is DBT, which sort of it included all the things I'd been learning until then and more. All the ways to deal with people and to deal with ourselves. And yeah.
And so you went back to school and studied
Social
what did
work.
you, social work. And I had asked you why not child psychology, but then you told
So
me
that's how it works here. I
in
mean,
the States.
generally, if you want to work with people as a therapist, as a counselor,
Right.
there are actually two ways to do it. One is to become a licensed professional counselor. The other one is to become a licensed clinical social worker. And
Mm-hmm.
licensed clinical social worker can work in places like hospitals. There's slightly more opportunities for licensed clinical social workers than LPCs, but that's quickly fading, the difference. But when I went, I felt like I wanted to get the most flexible degree.
Mm-hmm. How long did that take you?
Well, I had to finish up with my BA. That took about a year and a half, and then another 2 years to get
Mm-hmm.
the MSW. And then it's another 3 years where you have to work under somebody to get your clinical license.
So can you tell us about DBT, Dialectical Behavioural Therapy? I had never heard of that until I spoke to you. It's fascinating.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it really
Tell us
is.
what it is and who it was for and who was it
Mhm,
invented for.
mhm, mhm. So it was invented by somebody by the name of Dr. Marshall Linehan. It was invented for people mostly with borderline personality disorder who were doing, suicidal, self-harm. It was initially used in inpatient facilities, and eventually it became something that's used in outpatient patient facilities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, right now, there are people that go to DBT groups because they just, they get overwhelmed by their emotions, basically. But
Like
that's
who doesn't at some point in time, right?
exactly. This is just an amazing, like a suite of skills. She didn't invent anything. She just put it together under the title of DBT. And
Mm-hmm.
if anyone here has heard of CBT, cognitive behavior
Yeah.
therapy, it includes some of those skills. However, it's also very much it's focused more on the emotional aspect of our psyche than the thoughts. Thoughts are part of it, but we
Mm-hmm.
start with the emotions. We
Mm-hmm.
start with, we start with our emotions and our somatic, what we feel in our bodies. And
Yeah.
then we go to the thoughts. So
So you want to talk about the different parts of DBT and really break it down for people because I found this fascinating. I thought, well, this should like everybody should know this, really.
exactly.
So let's have a little
Exactly.
mini masterclass right now about DBT.
Okay. So let's start with the name.
Yep.
Dialectical behavior therapy. So what's a dialectic? A dialectic is the idea that a dialectic actually means a synthesis of opposites. This idea that two opposite things can be true at the same time. In
Mm-hmm.
DBT, there's many dialectics, but the main dialectic when it comes to parenting is acceptance and change. The fact that we accept ourselves as we accept our children as we are, we validate our own experience, we validate their experience, we accept our own imperfections, right? At the
Mm-hmm.
same time, we don't just say, oh, everything goes, right? There's also this idea of change that we can learn skills to make changes in our lives. We can learn skills to help our children make changes in their lives. So we're constantly trying to balance the acceptance and the change. We talk about acceptance skills and change skills.
Mm-hmm.
The
And so
second concept,
the purpose of having this balancing act basically
hmm,
is to regulate extreme emotions. Is that right?
extreme emotions, and even more important, extreme behaviors.
which are attached to the emotions
Exactly.
sometimes. Yes.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
Exactly.
And
You
that's
know,
this wise mind that
mhm,
I mentioned in the intro.
right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So
Forget to wise mind, right? So again,
yeah.
that's another dialectic. There's the emotion mind and the reason mind. There are
Hmm.
times when it's appropriate to be an emotion mind. When we're
Hmm.
with somebody we love and we're trying to connect to them, we want to be an emotion mind. When
Hmm.
we're times we want to be in reason mind when we're doing our taxes and we're doing a math homework, right?
Yeah.
But most of the time, in all relationships, we want to be in wise mind. Wise mind doesn't ignore our feelings. It totally takes them into account, but it also doesn't ignore the logic of what's true and right in the moment.
It's really interesting. When you first told me about this, I thought that it sounded very much like the transactional analysis ego states, that most of the time we want to be in adult ego states, but at
Mhm.
a time if we're playing with our friends, we want to be in the free child ego state, or if we're being responsible or even with a child, we want to be in the adult ego state so that we can be sensible about something, not let our kid touch the hot stove, etc. But the minute that you're not both in the same ego state or in a complementary exchange, that's where the energy changes in the room, right? When somebody says something, somebody takes it the wrong way, and without anything. You're just like, what's happened? Nothing. Are you okay? Fine. It's like, you're not. Something's shifted. And that's when an ego state has changed. So it sounds very similar to that. So
So I'm glad you
again,
brought that up. I'm glad you
excuse
brought
me?
I'm glad you brought that up about ego states, about the adult and the child ego states, because as a parent, if when we're dealing with children, they're most often going to be in the child ego state. Once in a while, they'll show us the adult. So we kind of have to know who we're dealing with,
Yeah,
right?
well, yeah, you can't have a child be in the wise mind all the time, can you? Because they're not, well, they're learning, they're growing into that. Um, So, so if the right model is being a wise mind, how does that work then?
Okay, so there are four modules in DBT. Well, first of all, overall, our goal is to build a life worth living, right? The
That
goal of
sounds like a
DBT
great
is to
plan.
build a life worth living. The question is
Yeah.
how we do that. So there are four modules. One is mindfulness. Again, it's not exactly what you might think of when you think of mindfulness, but
Mhm.
that's part of it.
Mhm.
Mindfulness, emotion regulation, distress tolerance, and interpersonal effectiveness. Those are the broad titles of the four modules in DBT.
Mhm.
If you want, I could show you, I don't do much distress tolerance in my parenting because that's often needed, dealing adult to adult, adults dealing with their own lives, you
Mhm.
know, but I do the other three are very much a part of my parenting,
Mhm. Yeah,
coaching.
let's have an example of that.
Why don't you give me an example? Give me an example of something that a parent might struggle with, and then I can walk you through how we might use the different tools and skills to,
Wow,
to
I'm so
help
out
them.
of active parenting mode. I've just moved into active glamour mode. Let me think back to when my children were little. Um, Gosh, I wish I had had all of this info back then, of course, back in the olden days. Um, yeah, so my eldest son, okay, he was younger, but maybe you can still talk about this. Maybe he was in the distraction phase, but not when we had to get out the door, So he hated putting his shoes on or having shoes on his feet, like really. And he kept saying they hurt him. And I tried everything, other shoe, and they didn't hurt him. But he realized he was pretty smart, if I say they're hurting me, right? But he didn't want to wear shoes. Like, I get it. He wanted to be the free barefoot child, but we live in Northern England. Come on, you need shoes. So oh, what a temper tantrum all the time. And I didn't know what to do. So I probably just sat there crying like you did, trying to get your 4-year-old out the door, like, I don't know what to do. I have to put the shoes on your feet. So can you use that as an example?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. First of all, I feel for you. I just,
I'm over it now. He's 34.
yeah, mine is the
Just
same
about
age.
past that now.
Wow, wow, wow. Again, in the moment, it feels so big, but looking back, we can laugh, right? So that is one of the skills, is kind of, sort of fast forwarding in our minds. Is this really going to bother me in 10 years from now? Is he still
I
not
think
going to want to be putting on his shoes? Probably not.
keeping a sense of humor when you're a parent, a young parent, is essential because
I know,
you just
I
look at
know.
your children as entertaining. So, yeah, no, he still doesn't like to wear shoes. No, he's in flip-flops most of the time. Funny. I didn't ever think of that till now. Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So yeah, things kids are born with a certain way, but the first thing is mindfulness, right?
mhm,
We think
mhm,
about well, mindfulness I explain as observe, describe, participate. Notice what's going on for you, right? What feelings are coming up? What are you experiencing in your body? Okay. So what would you imagine someone in that situation might be experiencing in their body?
what, the kid,
No, you, the mother,
me,
the mom.
um, um, upset, frustration.
So those are the
Yeah,
feelings. But
yeah.
when you experience that upset and that frustration, what do you notice in your body?
Oh, okay, right. So like a tight throat, uh,
Mm-hmm.
clenched stomach,
Mm-hmm.
tight shoulders, the worried,
Mm-hmm.
contracted face. Um, yeah.
Right, right. Okay. So yeah, so once you notice that, you notice what you're thinking about what's happening, what you're
Mm-hmm.
feeling now. So you're feeling the frustration, you're feeling upset, maybe a little sad, a little worried. There's all these different feelings mixed together.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, that sort of sinking. I always, young mothers, it's just like it was
mhm.
so funny when my teenagers, I'd just be looking at them lovingly and they'd look at me and they'd go, "What? Oh God, you make me feel so guilty." And I just start laughing. I'm like, God, what power? I'm like, you have no idea what guilt is until you're a mother, let me tell you. Because as a baby, I felt so guilty. Like, am I doing wrong by my child? So this sense of, it was just like a despairing thing in my stomach. Like, I just don't have the answers. I don't know what to do. Am I screwing up my child for life? So it was this pit of despair in my stomach. Like, everything chunks down to that, and intense guilt. Like, oh my God, how am I screwing up my child by putting his shoes on? Like,
Yeah,
it's, it takes up your whole
exactly.
world.
Exactly.
I could start
Exactly.
crying just remembering this time. I am over it
Big.
though.
It's big. It's big. It's definitely big. It's definitely
Wow.
big. So again, acknowledging that bigness, taking that moment with ourselves. Again, unless there's an emergency. If there's an emergency, there's an emergency that makes sense that we're acting like there's an emergency. But the vast majority of situations are not life-threatening emergencies. Therefore, we can take the time to care for ourselves. First step is mindfulness. Observe, you're noticing, put language on it, just like you did now. You described to me the feelings, the body sensations, the thoughts, right? You described all that to me. The next step is participate. How am I going to participate in what's going on or not participate? Or what am I going to do next? What's the action I'm going to take or not take? That's also participating. Not doing anything is also another way to participate. So the next step, if the feelings are really intense, like you're describing, before you can deal with the child, you kind of have to deal with yourself, kind of have to
Mhm.
lower the level of intensity. Because if you react from that intensity, it's not going to be good for anybody. right?
No, no, of course, because then you're stressed. You're like, would you just get it? And the child's like picking up on all of that emotion. Yeah,
That's kind of the cycle that we're trying to break,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
The yelling guilt cycle. So the way we break it is first is awareness or mindfulness. Okay. The next step is emotion regulation. What can we do to bring ourselves back into wise mind? Right now we're in emotion mind. What can we do? So there's a few different skills that I teach. One is wise mind accepts. Um, and the word accept, ACCEPTS, each one of those letters represents a specific thing that we can do to lower the intensity of our emotion.
Oh,
So
okay.
A is right. So A is activities. Is there something that we can do in the moment? Even if it's taking a cold drink of water, even if it's squishing a squish ball. I don't know. Everyone has something different.
Stopping to deep breathe for a moment or
Right,
whatever it is.
right,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So we do talk about go skills and stop skills. There are skills that sort of slow down our system, and there are skills that rev up our system so that kind of get the feelings out. So
Hmm.
really, we want to have choices, what we
Hmm.
can do, what tends to
Hmm.
help us to lower the intensity of our emotions. And sometimes that means speeding things up, and sometimes that means slowing things down. Like taking a deep breath is an example of slowing things down.
Hmm.
Listening to music or quick music would be an example of revving things up.
Hmm.
Doing 10 jumping jacks would be an example of revving things up. These are all different things that we could do to lower the level of intensity. And then the next step is something called interpersonal effectiveness, which is all kinds of skills that we use to um, to be in connection with another person, even when we need them to do something that they don't necessarily want to
Hmm.
do.
Hmm. I mean, I always tried logic, right? But what you're having logic with the 2-year-old, and I would take the shoe. I'm like, look, and I'm like checking inside. There's nothing inside, and I'd hold it up to the bottom of his foot to show him that it fit his foot. And I tried, but I don't know what was landing with him. He just didn't want to wear the shoes, so I didn't know what to do.
Right, right. So should I walk through how I would deal with the child now that I dealt with
Yeah,
myself? How I
yeah.
might, again, I'm not in there right now. My youngest is 9, I don't do much of that with my
Great that they
grandchildren.
grow up. I mean, babies and little children are really cute, but I really loved each phase better than the last. And everybody kept saying, wait till they're teenagers. Well, even in their grunting phase, I really liked the teenage phase too, and I love them as adults. I think they're all wonderful phases. And yes, I guess that's why we could be doting grandparents because we start all back with the baby who we can then give back to the parents.
Yes. Totally.
Okay, so how would you deal with the child without the
Oh, the
shoes?
first thing is I would get down to their level and validate. Just let them know that I get that this is so uncomfortable.
Like
It's so
literally
uncomfortable.
get down to their level.
Yeah, get down, pick them up, depending on what's practical. Get down to their level, look at them, listen to what they're saying, reflect back. It doesn't mean you agree. That doesn't mean you're going to let them go out without shoes, unless you choose
Hmm.
to, unless it's practically possible and you choose to. But the idea is that you're really going to spend a few moments to listen and reflect back. I get it, right? Wow, it's so uncomfortable. You really wish you didn't have to, wear shoes now. It's so much more fun to go around with your socks. I understand. Yeah, yeah. And then you could ask a question. Once you see that they're calmed down, you could ask them a question. I don't know what that might be. In this case, you could give them a choice, let's say. Do you want me to put your shoes on your feet, or do you want to put your shoes on your feet? But just the thing with giving a choice, make sure that you're equally okay with both choices, because they'll sense if one choice is better for you than the other one, they'll choose the other one.
Hmm. Or even
So
like, do you want to wear two pairs of socks or, different socks or no socks?
well,
Yeah.
don't say no socks if that's not okay, right? In other
Yeah,
words,
but you know, Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Whatever
Exactly. I would
what,
try, I
yeah.
would try choices. I would
Yeah.
also try, giving them something in their mouth, in their hands, whether it's a toy or some food, something for that would be the distraction, idea.
Right.
Distract them with something else while you quickly get their shoes on and get them out the door. Again, we're talking a 2-year-old. So
Yeah.
there's certain ways I would deal with a 2-year-old I wouldn't necessarily deal with a 4-year-old.
Well, because 4-year-olds, you can kind of logic with a 4-year-old a little bit more, and probably a 4-year-old would have much more to say back to you, I
Right.
imagine.
Right. Right. You might
Yeah.
have a
So,
little more insight and you might find yourself agreeing with it.
hmm.
There is a skill I teach called Dear Man. I wouldn't do
Oh,
it so
yeah.
much with a 2-year-old. This idea of this sort of like for sort of a formula to encourage another person to do something without rupturing the relationship.
Hmm.
We have to use it in things that are negotiable. Like wearing the shoes and not wearing the shoes, I don't think that was negotiable. But
Hmm.
something like, let's say going to sleep on time. Okay, is that a good
Hmm.
example? Going to sleep by 8:30 at night.
Hmm.
That's a little bit negotiable, 10 minutes before, 10 minutes after, let's say for a 9-year-old. Okay, we want him to be in bed by 9 o'clock. So, we could start by saying 8:30, because we know he's going to negotiate. Maybe we'll end up with the 9 o'clock bedtime that we really want. You can be a little smart here. But the idea is is you describe what's going on. I'm noticing that your bedtime has been getting really, really, really late lately, and you're waking up not in a good mood in the morning, right? I notice what's going on here. And specifically the facts. When that happens, I feel really sad that I have to wake you up and you're in such a bad mood in the morning. Or I'm really
Hmm.
worried that you're not getting enough sleep, right? That's the express. And then the assert, the or ask is from now on, do you think you can be in bed by 8:45 at night? And then maybe, I don't know what you'd like to do with your son, but some kids like to play a game together, talk about something, take turns telling a story. I don't know. Some kids even like to be read to. I know my son still likes to be read to at that age.
Hmm.
But whatever reward, or in the morning, I'll have time to make you hot cocoa, or whatever it is, whatever reward, whatever it is that you can make it, that there's a little bit more of an incentive for him. So that's the dear part. The
I
R
mean,
is the
it's
reward.
really about effective communication with your
Mhm,
kid to
mhm,
explain all of the aspects of this is not just about you, kid, and a power struggle. This is because how your mood is affects how I feel, and it's a constant dance. So it's like reflecting on all of those different parts. It's really very, very good. I mean, because our children don't know all of the stuff that we know. I mean, Forrest was having a massive temper tantrum once. He was 9 and Rome was 7. Hugest age difference there ever was. Later, less, earlier, less, but then, oh my gosh. And crying and crying and I was beside myself and I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry that you're the oldest and that I have to learn everything with you. I've never been a mom before. And he just stopped crying immediately and looked at me like I had 3 heads. Like, what? What a concept. Because he only knew me as mom. Like, what do you mean you've never done this before? It changed our relationship dramatically. Like, right there and then. And then I started to ask him more questions like, well, you're 9. Like if there's stuff that you want to do, I can't guess. I've never been a 9-year-old boy, first of all. So you got to let me know what's going on for you. And he's like, oh, okay. I'm like, is there stuff that you want to do? And he was like, well, yeah. And he listed off like 10 things. I'm like, don't you want to think about that for a minute? And he had a whole list of things. And I was just like, wow, okay, okay. So yes, it opened up a whole level of
right.
communication with us that we hadn't been having before that because he didn't know also that, you're the mom. But even though I was approachable and fun in terms of communicating, you've got to tell your children, you've got to model that to them also.
So
So
powerful.
that's amazing. So what does the man part stand for in the
So the
dear man?
man is basically how you do the dare part. M
Right.
stands for mindful. Be mindful. Is this a good time? Is my child not ready to talk because he's tired or hungry or just totally overwhelmed by emotions? And also, if he throws something back at you, you could gently say, no, now we're talking about this, right? So that's
Mhm.
part of being mindful. And then the A stands for act confident, act like the child wants to listen and wants to do what you want. And, act like you're the mom, because you are. And then N stands for negotiate. Be prepared to negotiate, to give a little, you're really negotiating is kind of demonstrating to the child how, like you said, how to have good communication in your relationships.
I don't think this is just for children, Devora. I think this is for men. That's why it's called Dear Man. You can use it in your relationships with your partner.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's
Oh,
just
that's
what I'm
hilarious.
focusing on. Yeah, totally.
Um, that's really great. There is a lot of good stuff in there. And um, did we finish the example with the getting the shoes on, the dear man? So you were doing all of that. Well, you might not do that with a 2-year-old, but we finished getting down to their level, asking questions, distraction. Did we finish that process?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I
we
think
did.
so.
We
You
got the
you tell
shoes on.
me. You tell me if
I
we're missing
think we did.
anything here.
So what about um like kids? Well, first let's just talk about what you do and what you offer in case we're getting close and running out of time later on, because we're getting near to our fast hour. So let's not. It's been absolutely fascinating talking to you as always. I could talk to you for hours and hours because you're very, very wise and you know a lot. And I wish I had known you when I was much younger and doing the whole parenting thing. Um, but let's talk about what you're offering now in your creative wisdom. Tell us what you do.
So what I'm doing now is I created something called the Peaceful Parenting Pathway, where I really support mothers in learning these skills initially and then actually implementing them and really giving like almost in the moment support as they're
Hmm.
trying out these new skills.
Hmm.
That's what I just like a 12-week program that I do. And that's the initial. And if people want more, then they can continue. That's
Hmm.
what I'm doing right now. I also published a couple of books on this subject to sort of give over these things and just step by step.
And so you also mentioned to me that there was a 5-day challenge.
Right, right. I did do a
Uh,
5-day challenge, and I'm going to be, making it into sort of something that you could instantly download as opposed to a live thing. Sometimes I do a live classes,
mhm.
individual, like you call it a master class or workshop. Right now, I don't have anything coming up, but in the next month or so, I should have something.
So from the 12-week coaching program, you thought let's chunk it down and make a little 5-day teaser challenge.
Actually, the opposite. The teaser is to teach people the stuff, and the 12 weeks is to get them to implement and give them the support to actually using it.
Oh, okay. And so what's the challenge sort of about?
It's
Do
really
people?
step by step. It starts with mindfulness, um, mindfulness as a way to sort of break the cycle of the yelling. And then
Hmm.
it moves to emotion regulation skills. Again, exactly what I was describing to you before. It's the
Hmm.
skills of emotion regulation, a few different skills and broken down and how to use it with our children. And then it
Hmm.
goes to, and then the last day of the challenge is about repair because we're not perfect and we're going to keep doing it. How do we repair? How do we reconnect with our children? Oh, and in the middle, there's interpersonal effectiveness. There's, how to get our children to do the things that you need them to do without rupturing the relationship. It's really
Hmm.
just a deep dive into, all the skills that I teach.
Hmm. That's fascinating. So how do people find you, Devora?
So I have a website called segalcoaching.com, spelled with two L's. One L is somebody else. So two
All
L's,
right. Okay.
segalcoaching.com. I guess that's the quickest, easiest way. Yeah,
www.segall, Segall coaching.com.
right.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. Um, so yeah, you talked about communicating, that in order to communicate with the kid, we've got to start here with us first, calming
Mhm.
ourselves down, because if we're like fractious, the child is going to be fractious. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely fantastic. And we talked about dear men, so that's very good. What about what about like another little example? And I know it'll probably be the same kind of thing, but like a lot of kids don't want to eat, right? You're sitting there and the kid is just not eating, and eating is important. So,
So one thing that I didn't focus on, which I feel I should based on who your audience is, this idea of trauma, right?
right.
This idea of, early childhood trauma, birth trauma, and that affects how we show up with our children. That affects what happens to us inside when our
Mm,
children do different things. Like if we had a hard time with food growing up, if our parents either we didn't have enough, our parents, pushed us too much in that area, we'll often have very strong reactions, or shall we say, we'll often overreact to our children's relationship with food. So
right.
it's
Yeah.
really important to, even to talk to somebody, talk to your doctor about your child's doctor about what are normal expectations. I mean, I remember personally panicking. I'd had a baby and my child was refusing to eat. Like all he had eaten one day was, I think, a bagel and like the leg of chicken. And, I called the doctor panicking, like, how much is a 4-year-old? Is again a 4-year-old. How much is a 4-year-old
Yeah.
supposed to eat? Um, so I said, they asked me how much did he eat today? Oh, a bagel or a half a bagel and a chicken leg. Oh, don't worry. And anyway, you can look at the whole week and make sure they had adequate nourishment, By the next day, he was eating fine. But again, we tend to panic about these things. The first thing we need to do is we need to check the facts. Like, is
Hmm.
this really something I need to be panicking about? Is this an
Hmm.
emergency? And if it's
Hmm.
not, take care of ourselves. When we're regulated, our child is more likely to have adequate nourishment. Now,
Hmm.
it's really, really, when it comes to eating, I would first go to what's going on around this. Is everything calm? Like, is this a food? Is this a texture that my child has a hard time with? Maybe I need to have an alternative for them. Or maybe he's
So, I
not
mean,
hungry.
those are really good questions also to ask your kid, because sometimes it is, I know my kids don't like certain things because of, yeah, the texture or the consistency of something, which is a really interesting thing. Um, yeah, that's a really important thing. And I mean, my girlfriend was just here since December, and we both came out and said what our parents would say: you're going to sit there and eat that because there's children starving in Africa. And I remember saying, well, then put it in an envelope and send it to them because I'm not going to eat it. Right. And we'd have to stay at the table when everybody left as though I was eating it. I wasn't. I was putting it in my napkin and flushing it down the loo because I wasn't going to eat it. So that's like punishment over not eating. So with my kids, they weren't too fussy actually, but I'd say both, I'm not cooking two separate dinners. The two of you have to agree on something, and I'll make it for you. And you have to try at least a little bit. So if there's like vegetables, like you have to have just even if it's one pea, you have to have at least one pea. They're like, okay. Yeah. So there's
Right.
different
Again,
things you can
yeah.
do.
Food is like a whole separate discussion.
Another whole umbrella. Yeah. Well, you're so interesting to speak to. I really hope that a lot of people contact you, a lot of young parents who are going, what do I do? Yeah. So let's have some downloads now. If you'd like to change some neural pathways in your brain and just put your feet flat on the floor, have a little sip of water so that you're properly hydrated, and hold your palms up and then relax them down either on your lap or the table that you're sitting at so you're not just hovering. And let me just connect. And if you'd like to receive this download, just say yes out loud. I know what it feels like to notice what I'm feeling in my body. I know what it feels like to notice my emotions. I know what it feels like to notice what I'm thinking. I know when to stop and scan my nervous system before dealing with my kids. Okay, that's good. I feel like there's lots of energy moving out there. So if you're saying yes, just feel that energy coming through your body. You might see lights or flashes. You might feel tingling up your legs. There is a page on YouTube, I think, that just gives the healing from the ends of all of these shows. If you want all of the healing downloads, you can get that, or you can go to my website, shannonoflaherty.com or shannonbtb.com, and leave your email address, and you can get a freebie there. Lots of questions you can ask your parents about your own birth and past experiences, and also access to the healings. So, Devora, if our listening audience could take away one thing from this conversation, what's the most important thing you'd like them to know?
You're doing great. Each of us, exactly. Each of us, has our struggles, but that's it's part of being here. It's part of being alive, is that we're working on ourselves, each of us from where we're starting, and just give yourself credit.
Thank you. That's really
Especially,
great. Yeah.
especially when it's hard, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We don't have to be perfect. Nobody's broken. You're doing the best you can. And
Mhm.
maybe you can get some more tools if you're finding it particularly challenging.
Exactly. Hold both true.
Devora, yeah. Yes, two things are possible at once. Yes, I really love that. That's true in life too, isn't it?
Mhm.
Thank you so much, Devora, for your insight, your wisdom, your guidance. It's been absolutely wonderful to have you as a guest on my show today. And remember, everybody, you can reach her at segallcoaching.com. Yeah,
2 hours.
it's two L's. Yes. And go get some parenting tips. Thank you so much, Devora. It's been wonderful to have you.
Good one.
See you next time, everybody.
Yeah.
You have been listening to Beyond Birth Trauma, From Burden to Brilliance with Shannon O'Flaherty on Transformation Talk Radio. On the second Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific Time, we connect the dots between your ancestors, your birth, and the patterns that keep you stuck, guiding you to a place of profound healing and unstoppable brilliance. By examining and healing your cellular imprint from birth of how you perceive and respond to the world and the challenges that are created in your day-to-day life, we can begin to heal and live more balanced and fulfilling lives. For more information, visit shannonbtb.com. That's shannonbtb.com.